Sky creatures are one of the most played creatures type in the game because they are the most mobile. However, that is mostly for the normal traveling. In this video, I will show you some mechanic and tip for you to using them in the PvP area as a sky or glider creatures. Of course, when you are traveling or doing PvP as a flyer or glider creatures, you always want to be in the glide mode, which active by pressing F on your keyboard. The reason behind this is because it helps you save stamina, because when you're holding shift, you gain a burst amount of speed. So by gliding, you will have glide regen, which will help you get more stamina available for that boost. So here are the factors that you should account for, which is height. So why is height so important? It creates safe distance between you and your opponent, usually the land creatures. It also makes you harder to track because the camera has to look in a very awkward angle if they want to keep you inside, unless they are the super behemoths. So how can you gain more height? In the game, there are three main methods you can use. The first method is simply pressing F and pointing your camera upward. This basically turns the glide mode on and off to slowly gain more height. The second method is basically just dive downward until your creatures build enough momentum, then point your camera upward again. This converts that momentum into height. The second method is basically an upgrade version of the first one, but there is another method that works even better. The third method, which is the last one, is called backward flying. This is the best method to gain more height. There are already many videos on the YouTube platform to explain this, so I just gonna briefly mention it instead of going to full detail. To perform it, simply turn your creature backward until it's almost facing back and tilt your camera upward. This will let the game think that you are diving down, which is why they give you an insane amount of boost. You can using this tactic to escape dangerous situation or simply just fly high and enjoy the view. So with that being said, the third option is obviously the best, so why don't people using it? Surprisingly, it's not because of the difficulty, it's actually because of the hardware difference. If you have a decent or good PC, backward flying becomes much easier to perform. The higher FPS you have, the easier it is to perform backward flying. One of the biggest issues I believe come from the creature themselves, especially from the fact that the developer keep releasing new tier 5 creatures, which make the game even more laggy, since there will be multiple tier 5 or super behemoth at the same time in the same server. Because of this, the game can feel a bit pay to win, but overall, try to get more height while fighting to give yourself an advantage when you're looking for a play to strike. With that being said, I have covered the core flying mechanic for you to PvP and just traveling around in general. For the part where you can actually do damage to the opponent, the first thing you need to do is typing /hitbox on the chat box. This will allow you to know your creature hitbox. Alternatively, you can just check this on a Fandom, but I would not recommend that. This part is quite important because you need to know the range of your attack, otherwise you will miss a lot of them if you can't judge how large your hitbox is. For example, most sky and glider creatures have the hitbox in front of them, but the creature like Agent Warden have the hitbox that cover the entire in front area. Now that you know how to fly and understand the attack range, how do you deal damage actually? Your goal is simple, hit them without letting them hit you back. Sky creatures usually have a very low weight or HP, so trading hit or facing is usually not a great idea. The one key factor I haven't mentioned is the QE key. These keys allow your creature to turn or bend in that direction while flying. Of course, you need to combine that with the A or D while pressing Q or E, but the idea is still there. So after you landing a hit, quickly flying a random direction by pressing Q, A or E, D, depending on this is depend on the position you are attacking. Usually you want to move to the opposite direction of where your opponent is about to attack, which means you need to predict their attack a little bit. If done correctly, this should help you to avoid taking damage while dealing damage and startle effect to your opponent. I'm not completely sure if this strategy is effective, but I find it quite reliable, and it is what I do for PvP as a sky creatures. Yeah, that's pretty much for this part. Even though it's quite short, and the fundamental idea is just simple, like try not to get hit while hitting them as much as possible. But of course, practice is still needed. One more thing I should warn you about is to make sure your FPS is decent. With the number of the tier 5 creatures or super behemoth in the game or in the server in general, it can affect your performance. Not just affect the backward flying things, but overall your gameplay. But yeah, that's pretty much for the fundamental of PvP as a sky or glider creatures. Here is a quick recap. Always stay in a glide mode, try to using the third method to gain more height wherever possible, or combine the first and the second method if needed, even though it is not effective. Know your hitbox and attack range, try to stay in the air as much as possible. You win fight by poking them and dealing cheap damage, not by facing tank. Now here are some mistakes for the new player often make when they are playing as a sky creatures. Don't even think about landing to just poke them. Landing and taking off again costs a lot of stamina, which is bad because you want that stamina to stay mobile. Not to mention that if you do this in front of a creature that have wing shredding ability, you basically cook. I also wouldn't recommend playing a glider as a new player. They function similarly to the sky creatures, but there are a few different that make glider difficult for a new player. One of the biggest one is that gaining height is much more harder to compare with the pure sky creatures. If you can, and you should, try not to stay too close to the ground. If you stay near the ground for a few seconds, your creatures may ultimately ground itself because the game detected you are being grounded, I think. And lastly, try not to dive straight from above, instead dive from the right or the left side, or control where you can slow down, which means that choose where you want to attack and make it unpredictable for them. And this was it. This video might a bit shorter compared to the aquatic creatures I made earlier, since I'm trying to organize the information better. Hopefully this still gives you enough tips and knowledge to get started. And remember, this is just my own experiment, so feel free to take this as a reference. As always, I hope you have a great day and I see you in my next video. See ya.